Alright guys, so we got a package in the mail from Shirley Wang in China. And it arrived very quickly. I was surprised. Let's see, what does this say here? It says Yangjing. There we go. So, in this box, we have something very exciting. It's the motor for the next e-bike build that I'm going to do. So let's pop this guy open and see what's going on. Ooh, well, what do we got in here? What's going on? Hey, look. It's a BBSHD. Alright, so check it out, guys. It's a BBSHD of the 68mm variety. Right? Because BBSHDs are a mid-drive that goes into your bike's bottom bracket shell. And so it comes in different sizes right here. This one's made for a 68mm to 73mm bottom bracket shell. It's got little styrofoam chunks all over it. So let's take a look at it. Feels pretty smooth. This part right here looks a little bit different from the 120mm version that I have on my other bike. And then let's look at the markings on the bottom. So it says BBSHD 48 volt 1000 watt. It's got a big serial number on it. QC11. And the controller has some markings on it. And so that's all that's in there. I just bought the bare motor. I didn't buy the full kit. So here's the BBSHD. It's the BAFANG 1000 watt mid-drive. So the first thing that I want to do is kind of just, so we've got some Anderson connectors. They just look like cheap ones. They don't have the little, they don't have the capital A or anything. They don't have any letters on there at all. So it's just cheap Anderson connectors. Those can be kind of a problem sometimes. I've had issues with them getting hot. And then, so down here on the wires coming out of the BBSHD controller, we've got the speedo. This goes to the speedo thing that reads the speed for the magnet on your wheel. This is to kind of like the main wiring harness for the mid-drives. I've got one over here that we're going to use to test this motor in a second, so I'm going to plug, so that's the connector that looks like this. Looks like it's got like 8 or 9 pins in there. I'm going to get that connected. Alright, so I plugged in the 1T4 harness into the BBSHD. We'll use that in a second. So this, I think, is for the shift sensor. We've got some wires here for, looks like 5 or 6 volt lights or something, probably. Alright, so I've connected BBSHD to the battery with these Anderson connectors. And then I've connected the 1T4 wiring harness to my display that I have over here. Right, so if I use the controls that are hooked up to the display, I can use the power to turn this thing on. Gotta turn the battery on. Alright. So it seems like it's spinning. Sounds pretty good. I'm getting a error 21. I think that is because the speedo isn't connected to anything. Alright, so that's the BBSHD motor. I just tested it by connecting the motor to a battery and also connecting it to a wiring harness that has a display and a throttle connected to it. I made sure that the throttle worked with the motor. I made sure that the pedal assist was working. Everything seems and sounds pretty smooth. Seems pretty good. So we've verified that the motor's working on just kind of like 48, 52 volts that it's rated for. So that's always good. It's a good idea to test the motor right when you get it and before you've installed it on the bike or anything and it's got all scratched up and stuff like that. So, alright, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. Alright, so I'm going to disconnect the 1T4 wiring harness. And then I'm going to disconnect the Andersons. So I'm disconnecting the motor from the battery. And then I'm going to get that stuff out of the way here. Alright, so I got these 6 bolts out of this front kind of big cover on the BBSHD. I'm gonna gently pull on this thing. Alright, so that's coming apart, and then so I want this, I don't want to wreck this paper gasket. So I've got a little plastic iFixit spudger is what I think they call these, but it's kind of just like a little plastic toothpick kind of deal. And just make sure that the paper gasket on this thing is all gonna stay on one side of this crack as you're opening it, so that the paper gasket doesn't rip. So I'm just gonna go around the edge of the whole thing with this thing and kind of make sure that I want the paper gasket to just stay on there. So I'm gonna kind of pry it over to the right. Alright, so I've used my little iFixit spudger plastic pick thing to kind of make sure that this paper gasket right here didn't get all ripped up as I'm pulling this thing apart. So I've got the paper gasket all kind of stuck over here where I want it to be, and then I can keep pulling. And we're going to pull this guy out like this. Alright, so there we can see how much grease they put on it. From the factory. I mean, there's a little bit extra in there. So it looks like the clutch, there's a light coat of grease on there as well. It's the same grease that's on this gear. You gotta be careful of this disc. It's like the pedal assist. It's kind of just like a flimsy disc. You don't want to break that. And then, so on here, it seems like there's some of the same kind of grease on this as well. This little bearing that's on the axle. So you can see there's a little bit of grease in here, but nothing crazy. It's kind of all gunked up in this crevice here. I think I can actually see white lithium grease from the nylon gear, and it's already kind of mixing with this grease off of the steel gear on this pinion gear. I can see that white lithium grease down in there. It seems like the white lithium grease is already mixing with this other darker grease. It seems like there's some glue on this little pedal assist board. It actually seems like this screw is like rusting. That's a little bit interesting. Alright guys, so I opened up this part, got the grease out off of that big gear inside of there and the clutch, and then I re-greased it with some of the SHC 100. So this part looks all set. I'm gonna flip it over. Alright, so I got this puppy apart. It was a little bit difficult getting this guy disconnected, this big 6-wire JST, because it had so much silicone. But I kind of picked away at it with this iFixit poker thing. Oh, this is a spudger. The iFixit spudger is what this thing is. So I got this controller out. I got the 3 gaskets out. And then I was able to pull this guy out. So I'm going to set this aside for now and focus my attention over here. We had a little bit of a casualty, ripped this paper gasket right there. I think I should be able to get it to stay there when I put it back together. Here, I'm gonna have to get this gasket off of here. There we go. I did it. So this is how the nylon bearing, or the nylon gear, comes from the factory. There's a whole bunch of white lithium grease back down in there and stuck to the side of this gear. And then it looks like there might be something else that was inside of here. Let's see. There's definitely something greasing this up. It's some kind of an oil though. It's not it's not that white lithium grease, it's something else. Alright, so here's the peak gear from Luna that I'm going to use instead of the nylon gear that comes stock. I took the white lithium grease out of there. I left whatever little kind of oil they have that goes inside of this spread clutch. I'm just gonna go with that. So I'm gonna drop in the well, first we're gonna grease it up. Let's grease it up. Okay, we got that puppy greased up. And it's going back in there this way. Just like that. There we go. I'm gonna use my finger to smush some grease down in here. Because it came with quite a bit smushed down in there stock. So I'm gonna do the same and get some in there. Alright, so let's get this C-clip back onto this nylon peak gear thing here. There we go. Kind of snapped in there. We gotta get this plate back on here. Alright, so we got that plate back on there. Now we can get this big fella back on here. We'll have to try and get this thing to stay here. So the phase wires are 12 gauge. I'll save this nylon gear just as a spare for the BBSHD in case I need one. Alright, so at this point, if I was going to upgrade my BBSHD to a different controller, I would just leave it like this, and then you would connect the phase wires and then the other things to your controller. But for now, I am going to hook this stock controller back up to it.